Welcome to TalkAbout, the show where I talk about whatever it is I feel like talking about, whether it's the hottest gaming news or just any random thing that comes to my mind. Beyond this intro and the outro, this is completely unscripted content. The idea being that there's less production behind it, meaning these can be more frequent than the video essays I do here, and that way it's just more conversational. The only way to make this more of a conversation, though, is with you. Keep an eye out for the occasional post here on the channel so that your voice may be heard on the next TalkAbout. And the best way to see these posts is by subscribing to the channel. And so that we can get even more like-minded player voices heard in these, be sure to hit the like button and share this video to everyone you know to boost that algorithm and get this video out to those who need to see it. I'd appreciate that. Anyways, today, I just wanted to talk about Star Wars Jedi Survivor because it's the only game I've been playing for like the past week because it's just that good. Right off the bat, I just wanted to say, yeah, it's a great game. It takes everything that I liked about Fallen Order and then just doubles down on all of it. Everything from like the combat, it feels so much better. The boss fights are so much better, or even just more frequent that they feel cooler. It's the best Star Wars experience I could have asked for, quite honestly, from a video game. There's a lot of talk when the game launched about bugs and performance issues, but I must say that in the 20 hours I played to roll credits, I experienced no bugs whatsoever, or no bugs that stuck in my mind at least. Nothing that detracted from the overall experience, and the performance was also fine. I played on quality mode though, so sticking at 30 meant that it was a lot less likely to drop, so I'd imagine if I played on performance, maybe I'd run into different issues, but I just didn't because I was playing on my big 4K TV, and if you watched the last TalkAbout episode, you know we talked about frame rate and the whole thing, and I like to play games on my big TV sometimes, and our Jedi Survivor was one of those that I wanted to play on the big TV, so I played 4K 30, and it was a great time. I really enjoyed it. The only downside to this game, though, was the platforming and the fabricated difficulty, if that makes sense. There was a lot of extensive platforming sections that did not take very kindly to my experimentation in how I would get it done. It was just a very streamlined, this is the only way to do it. You can't do it any other way. And I found that frustrating for me personally because I just wanted those parts over and I tried to rush through them. Maybe that's my own fault. Probably is. But other than that, the platforming, very frequent, and we could do less of it. We could work on doing less of it if we do another game, which I hope we do, by the way. And another thing is that the difficulty of the game is kind of, in a way, fake. You know? Like, obviously, it's the Souls-like combat, parrying, dodging, all that jazz, and I appreciated that very much because I'm a big fan of FromSoft games. But towards the end of the game, no spoilers, of course. Don't worry, I should put that in the front. I'll put that in like text bubbles. You'll see it. Anyways, towards the end of the game, the difficulty doesn't obviously towards the end of the game, it's going to be harder than it was at the beginning. But usually that would be from just bigger, badder enemy types. In this game, though, towards the end, they just throw like a half a dozen of the enemies at you at a time. Just not a half a dozen. They throw dozens of enemies at you at a time. And it just gets overwhelming to the point where that can be frustrating. It's not like... It felt like they're just padding out the ending, if anything. That's what it felt like to me, at least. Because, yeah, it was just waves and waves of enemies that just came out of nowhere, because if you look where they came out from, there's nothing there. They just showed up. It didn't make sense. They just wanted to add on to the length, I suppose, which was fine. It wasn't that bad, but it was a little... I didn't appreciate it at the time because it was just so many bad guys coming out of nowhere. And the last thing that I didn't like is that because of the way that the game's progression works, where you get abilities and gadgets throughout, it felt like exploration was discouraged because you get these bigger planets and stuff to explore, but oftentimes I would run into a scenario where I didn't have the necessary tool to explore the world, so I would just be like, all right, well, I'm going to go back to the main story and just beeline through that instead. And that story was a great time, by the way. At first, I was a little... Also, no spoilers. Still no spoilers. Don't worry about that. There's no spoilers whatsoever in this. Throughout the story, I was a little concerned. Like, it was like a fine story. Like an 8 out of 10 for the longest time. But then there's a certain point, and I'm sure you'll know it when you get to it, where it just goes from an 8 to a 9. And then there's another point where it goes from a 9 to a 10 story. Story-wise, the game as a whole, I would probably still label it under a 9 out of 10 because of the fabricated difficulty and the platforming I did not enjoy. And also there's another thing I didn't appreciate. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, and another thing that kind of keeps it from getting to that 10 out of 10 status for me is that the level designs sort of felt kind of cheap in a way, where a lot of the times you'll find shortcuts that lead you back to an earlier meditation point, and those points feel cool. But whenever you continue on through the level, it gets to the point where you're like, okay, well, now I'm just too far away from that meditation point, and obviously there's going to be just a new meditation point in front of me instead of us having a way to circle back, which I thought was kind of not ideal. It would have been cooler if they found ways to circle back to former meditation points instead of being super generous with the amount of meditation points there were. But they also double as fast travel points, so I suppose that makes a lot of sense when you think of it that way. But beyond that, great story, yes, obviously, I mentioned that. And it has just a beautiful emotional core to it all, which I won't go into detail here, obviously. And one of my biggest gripes from Fallen Order was, of course, the customization or lack thereof. And Jedi Survivor absolutely delivers on that. And you can make your Cal Kestis look however you want, really. You can make him look like a total freak, or you can make him look as cool as possible, like I did. And how could I almost forgot. I absolutely love the inclusion of the High Republic in this game. As someone who just recently decided to jump into the High Republic this year, and I've only read like 3 books so far, so I'm not even that far into it, the connections made between the High Republic era and this game were amazing, and I just loved every single bit of it and want more High Republic stuff to be just brought into the limelight. Like, obviously books are fine, books, comic books, all that stuff is great, but put them in video games, and that's a whole other level, because video games are my bread and butter. I enjoy reading, sure, but put a controller in my hand, oh my god, it's just that much better. There's not a day where I would rather read a book than play a video game. I'm just gonna say it. That's not a hot take, I know, but I just had to say it. And yeah, it's just, I don't really know what else to say about it, because I kind of just talk into the mic. That's what I do on this show. I just talk about a topic, and I did that. This is the point where I would then turn to the viewer write-ins, but this week there were no viewer write-ins. So instead, I will remind you to see the posts that let you write in. You gotta keep an eye on the channel. I feel like there's gotta be a better way than that. I just got really lucky with the first one where so many of you wrote in, and I guess I got to figure out a better way to get the word out there. Maybe I'll put it on Twitter. Who knows? But yeah, because there was no write-ins and I talked for a while there, it was very rambly. It's still a work in progress, obviously. I'm working on better collecting my thoughts. I had bullet points to get through, so that's neat. That's new. Some sort of structure, as opposed to last time where it was just rambling nonstop. Although this was still rambling nonstop. But stop I will right now. Oh, but the last thing I want to say before I do the outro, I just remembered, I was just kidding, that this game absolutely is an early, I say early, it's May now, so it's not really that early. It's a Game of the Year contender. I'd imagine that come Game Awards this December, this will be one of the 5 games? 6 games? How many games does the Game Awards usually have? Is it 5 or 6? Either way, I feel like this game's going to be up for that esteemed award of Game of the Year this year. Of course, it's going to have some very, very steep competition, with Tears of the Kingdom coming out next week as I record this. And, Hi-Fi Rush was great. Spider-Man comes out. Starfield hopefully is going to be worthy of that. it's a really good time to be into video games. But yeah, there may not have been any viewer write-ins for this episode of TalkAbout, but I would still like to hear from you. What did you think of Jedi Survivor? Did you run into any performance issues or bugs yourself? Did you like it more than Fallen Order? Is it an early Game of the Year contender for you? What was your overall experience with the game? And what would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? I want to know the answers to all of those questions in the comments below, because I still want to hear from you. I have to imagine that you guys somewhere out there have played this game, and maybe you just missed the post and you wanted to contribute, but you just didn't see the post. Either way, even if you saw it and you didn't do it, or you didn't play the game yet and you have now, I want to hear from you. So let me know all of those things in the comments below. But yeah, now, here's the outro. Thanks for watching this episode of TalkAbout, the show where I talk about whatever I want to talk about with you. Remember, the only way for you to be certain you see the post posing the question for the next episode is by being subscribed. So if you aren't already, you know what to do. Until then, stay safe and play some video games. And please keep an eye out for these posts, because I would very much like this to be more conversational than just me talking into a mic. Because yeah, I'm not quite great at talking into a mic just yet. As we all know, a work in progress, but it helps to have someone to bounce off of, and I would like you guys to be a part of that. So yeah, thanks for stopping by. See you in the next one, or I hope to hear from you guys.